All right. Welcome back, folks. Time to jump into Joshua. So we are discussing Joshua 3 and 4 today, continuing on with basically the function of getting into the promised land. And the thing that they need to do first and foremost before they can do anything else is they need to cross the Jordan River. Now, there are ways to cross the Jordan River, and it's often basically being able to ferry people back and forth. At points, the Jordan River is very wide. At points, it is actually fairly shallow and narrow. In recent years, there's a lot of diverting of the Jordan for crop purposes, so the modern-day Jordan River is a lot smaller than it used to be. But the fact of the matter is, there are thousands of people that need to cross, and they need to do it easily and effectively. So that brings us to our story today, which is an echo of a previous story.
Yeah.
So one of the routine ways that you can see that the spirit of one person is on the next person is they do similar miracles with the hand of God. So I hope you drew out the connection with today's story of the Jordan River with the crossing of the Red Sea.
Yep.
So we're going to talk a little bit about this crossing, but I want you to keep in your head, because I will be asking at certain points, how is this the same and how is this different? So let's jump in and start at the beginning of the story, where the spies are back. They've made their plan for attack, and now Joshua rises in the early morning, and it is time to cross the Jordan River. We get some initial instructions starting in verse 2. When you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God being carried by the Levitical priest, then you shall set out from your place, follow it so that you may know the way to go, for you have not passed this way before, yet there shall be a space between you and it at the distance of 2,000 cubits, and do not come any closer. So the Ark of the Covenant is meant to be portable. So 12 Levitical priests are going to hoist it up, carry it forward, and the people are going to follow where it goes. So I'm going to pause there. And what do you all think? If you were one of the people who is encamped, you're packing up your encampment, and the instructions that you're told is the Ark of the Covenant's going first. 2,000 cubits is a fair distance. It's about 3,000 feet. So it's going way out ahead of you, and you're tasked to follow it where it goes. What do you think for the camp of people? Mary Ellen, you're making a face.
I think you follow it close when it's 3,000 feet ahead of you. To me, that distance was hopefully just another one of the wonderful numbers they use, because that to me is excessive. I always, just kind of imagine distances in lengths of football fields.
Mm-hmm.
So then that's how I get a grasp of the distance. And so a football field is 100 yards, so 300 feet. And so now you got, how many football fields ahead of you are they? And it's like, I can't even see them off in the distance. So that to me is extraordinary. So also the numbers in here, the numbers of people that they're moving around, and just the massive task of moving this army and community, I just find overwhelming that they've been able to do that and thrive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gary, were you gonna jump in?
Well, well, just put it this way, math is not my strong suit. And I would really be puzzled if I had to figure out, what the 20.5 inches to get it to, what was it, 2,000. But it just seems kind of crazy that they, be like us telling people how tall we are in millimeters or something.
Uh-huh. So I did I found a conversion thing online, and it says 3,000 feet is about 10 football fields.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's an incredible distance away.
Yeah.
But
So
you
the
could
question-
still see them.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily that they were out of sight. And the only ones that has to worry about them is the first group in line. They've got to stay 2,000 cubits behind. The rest of them are going to follow them, So you
Right.
only got perhaps one leader of that. So you only got one guy that's got to worry about this distance.
Whether he's getting too close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Helen, what were you thinking?
Well, it's sort of assumed that they would know the distance, that they would know it. I mean, it doesn't say that they do, but when they just kind of assume it. And I was thinking that they better follow instructions because they know what happens if they don't. If they step
Right.
closer, they're going to get into trouble
So why is it dangerous to get closer?
because God told them, if God says it, you better stay back. I don't know. Maybe it was muddy until then or something. I don't know. There could be other reasons, but as long as it was God that said, stay back, God knows what's there and what's necessary. So they were following instructions, I think.
And maybe the distances really aren't comparable to anything we know now. So we're just guessing what the real distance was.
Yeah. Mary Ellen, then Larry?
Did they have to follow this far behind when they were moving on land? And I'm guessing the answer is no. And so then my follow-up question is, why is this different?
Okay, I'm going to hold on to that. Larry, did you have a thought?
Well, I was just going to say, looking at it from the writer's standpoint, the more detail you put in, the more believable the tale would be. And I wonder if that isn't often the impetus for all these minutiae that they include in the way of description and numbers and where to put it, and you can't do this, but you must do that. It may just be to sort of, make the story a little richer, a little easier for the populace to swallow.
I like that interpretation. But going back to Mary Ellen's question, why is this different? And there's basically two things that are going on here that make this, in a way, unique from what's been going on. So the key here is that the Ark of the Covenant is a representation of where God is. If you remember when they were traveling before, and especially before they had the Ark of the Covenant, God would travel before them in the pillars of fire and smoke, which meant God was out ahead and the people followed. But after the construction of the tabernacle, when the tabernacle is put into place, the Ark of the Covenant sits, and you have the Holy of Holies, and it's protected by 3 layers of the tabernacle. Remember, where you have the outer court, you have the inner court, and then in the inner court, there's the bifurcation, and priests only really get to go behind that, into the inner sanctum at the holiest of holy times. When they traveled in the desert, what is described is they would know to move when when the cloud lifted up and went ahead of them. So that shows that, once again, God is picking up and walking ahead of them. This is different. This is assuming that God is standing on top of the Ark of the Covenant. So the tabernacle is not protecting the people from the glory of God. There there's not those layers to basically protect them from God's holiness that will melt their faces off. Instead, the Levitical priests have done extra things to make them holy enough to touch it. And they have to walk ahead to protect the people, basically. So the distance basically takes the place of the tabernacle and that distance, because God is standing on it, like basically riding out on a human chariot.
Oh,
So it
Okay.
has a different image to it. This then begins like more of the image of the God of the Israelites being more of a God ready to go to war. God's not just going to walk out ahead of them. God is being presented in the chariot form and kind of being presented out. And also, God's going to do a miracle. And if God's going to do a miracle, God can't have those layers of protection around him, because then that holiness can't do what it needs to be done. So how does that change your mental image of what's happening here?
was it, I didn't pick that up, that God was standing on top of a chariot. Where does it say that?
It doesn't say it in particular. This is one of those that it is learned through doing like research into the other parts, where
Okay.
the Ark of the Covenant is constantly talked about as God's footstool.
Yes, oh, I see.
And so if God has not picked up and kind of like gone out ahead, like basically stepping off the footstool, the assumption is God's still standing on the footstool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mary Ellen?
Okay, so my visual image is when they're on land, going through the wilderness, God was leading them, and then the caravan was following the ark, or I've lost my words here, but they were following behind, and God was not present in the tabernacle at the point that they were on the move in the wilderness. So now that distance has been eliminated, and God is now present on, I keep thinking if I'm using the wrong words, but on the tabernacle. And is this the first time that he is, I hate to say physically, but you know, I kind of need that word, physically that close? Are you following what I'm trying to say?
I think I know what you're saying, yeah. Where instead of, I mean, kind of yes and. So if we have the image of like wandering in the wilderness and God kind of like steps off the footstool and kind of walks ahead, that's the image of the pillar of fire or smoke being out ahead, which would put the distance between God and the community. And this is in that worldview where God isn't necessarily omnipresent in all things. This is a worldview where God has a location. Like there is a being, a spiritual being attached to it. So God's not everywhere. God's right here. And so God walks ahead and makes sure there's nothing in the way. What's more, it's not that the distance has really changed. It's that the ark is kind of going with God out ahead this time, rather than the kind of the ark following with the people. So I think chariots is like an interesting way to think about it, is that you could have a general riding a chariot, or you can have a soldier walking forward. When God's leading them in the wilderness, it's kind of like God stepped off of the chariot and kind of was like a scout, making sure everything's clear, where this time God's just riding the chariot forward.
Oh, okay. Well, the other.
Yeah, Sue, go for it.
The other difference is that in the first instance, they are fleeing from an enemy, and in this case, they are not. They are going into a situation where they're going to have to do battle, but they don't have anyone behind them chasing them.
Oh, so comparing it to the Exodus, yeah, that is a great comparison to make, where before they're escaping. There's enemies on their tail. And there's actually one point, if you remember, in the crossing of the Red Sea, where like God leads them to the sea and then jumps behind them and battles Pharaoh's army behind them.
Mhm.
This time they're on the offensive. They are the enemy, or the army that's going to attack. And so God's going out front in like leading the charge rather than defending the people fleeing. So the image is slightly different here. So the other thing that is interesting is what the instructions are when they actually get to the body of water. So recalling back to the Exodus, what happens when they actually reach the Red Sea? Do you remember? Or I mean, this is kind of, I think it's the movie poster for the 10 Commandments. Like, what happens that allows them to walk across the Red Sea in the Exodus story?
The seas are parted.
How?
Goes this way.
Right, but like, what was the
Moses
instruction?
waves his staff, doesn't he?
Yeah, raise your staff and just the seas will part, right?
Yeah.
Where they get to stand back and they get to watch it.
Mhm.
And then they're like confident that the seas are parted and they can go forward.
Mhm.
All right. I need to go let someone in the door. Talk about what happens in this one that makes it slightly different. Or because this one has a different series of like, when are the people walking and when is the water parted? So I'll be right back.
Jeez.
Are we supposed to talk about it? It sounded to me like the flow was stopped and it was just on one side, not this way.
Right,
Not-
it wasn't divided, it was just dammed up, like
Yeah.
to stop from flowing.
Mhm. So the water is dammed up and like the one side keeps flowing on, like it goes to the Jordan River, and the one side is dammed up.
Mhm.
So what happens to part the river?
What happens to what?
The
Well,
part.
So like what makes the water actually dam up?
Oh, okay, I gotta go look.
Is it the same as Moses, where he lifts his staff and the waters part?
It blocked it and it flooded behind them.
The flow just stops.
So the flow stops, yes.
Okay.
Why? Like what happens just before the water stops flowing?
Doesn't Joshua do something? I forget what
He
it is.
shows,
When
yeah,
The priests step into the water.
Right. So the priests step into the water. Mary Ellen?
All right, so look in verse 15. Now the Jordan overflows all of its banks throughout the time of harvest. So when those who bore the ark had come to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests bearing the ark were dipped in the edge of the waters flowing from above stood still, rising up in a single heap. I love that. Far off at Adam, the city besides. Anyway, you had to have the toes of the priests in the water.
Right. They have to start walking into a flooded river first.
Mhm.
But that's
Rather
3,000 feet ahead of them.
right. So there's the gap between the people. So the people don't have to do this. But what are you thinking as the Levitical priest when you're at the water's edge and you're told to walk?
Mhm.
Gotta have faith.
trust.
To me,
They know they've got God present with them at that moment because he's not leading the distance as we discussed before. So they know they have him in the ark. Why would you be afraid?
because they're still human And you may still have God with you, but I'm going to tell you, if I am told to walk into a flooded river
Mhm.
and then it will part, I'm going to be a little bit nervous. I'm not telling you I won't do it, but I am going to tell you I'm probably scared for those first few steps.
Mhm.
Maybe it's shallow at the edge.
That is actually one of the thoughts with the description, is that because it is overflowed, they're not stepping off of the bank and into like dropping down into it, but they're able to start getting their feet wet before the drop off happens. Yeah,
And-
Larry?
And each of the priests is gonna stand on a rock. You know, and maybe that'll keep them up out of the depth of the water.
Mm-hmm.
Cause you gotta go collect those 12 stones later. So,
Right.
so the priests gotta find a rock to stand on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice how they were so conveniently placed. They could all stand on a rock and still carry the covenant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So why I think that it's important to point out that they have to walk first is actually how decisions are made sometimes in our own life. And like because sometimes when we're doing something in life, it feels like the waters part before us and all we have to do is just like walk ahead. The path is laid out, everything's falling into place, all you have to do is do it. And then there's other times where the waters are not going to part until you start walking. Sometimes the act of doing the thing is what makes things fall into place and the waters start parting, but you have to have faith to begin. Mary Ellen, I saw a hand.
Well, a very common phrase now that you have to get your feet wet. That when you're talking about people starting a new adventure and they're hesitant, whatever, you know, it's a common thing to say, well, you got to get your feet wet, you got to start. So it probably comes from this
Mm-hmm.
in my head.
Huh. I was thinking fake it till you make it.
Yeah. That's another one, like you do the thing until it actually works.
Yeah.
Other thoughts? Have you all had a time in life where you didn't know if it was gonna work, but you trusted that it was, and then like it actually did work out, but you didn't know that it was going to at first?
I think that's true of almost any new venture.
Yeah, Helen, say.
Well,
Does one
getting
come-
married might be one thing, you know, you're getting married, you don't know how it's gonna work because you've never lived with this person before. And when you start a new job, you don't know. When I started teaching, I thought, man, I hope I can do this. And I did it for 30 years, so it must have worked out.
Mhm.
There are a lot of things that you start out and you think it's not going, might not work.
Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine the feeling of the first day where you have a classroom full of kids and all of a sudden you're like,
Yeah.
can I like I am going to have to teach for a day of class. Like the children are here. I have to do it, but can I? And there's that like moment of all of a sudden they're here. All of a sudden it's happening. All of a sudden you're stepping into the river.
Yes, but of course I did a lot of planning to make it a fantastic first day. So I have
Excellent. Mary Ellen, I see you trying to jump in.
Any new venture is like that. You get married.
Mm-hmm.
You don't
Yeah.
know what you're getting into really. And you get your feet wet and you carry on and work it out the best that the two of you are able to. You go on a journey. I leave home on my own in my RV and head off into the wilderness. And you never know how things are going to turn out or what obstacles are going to appear, but you have faith that you can do this and keep going. I mean, most of life is like that.
Mhm.
So at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of people who want the rivers to be parted first. Like there's almost a sense of security where we would rather the Red Sea than the Jordan. We would love it if like you were guaranteed success at the outset, where you could look over and you're like, okay, all I can see all of the dry land. I know I'm gonna be safe. I'm gonna walk this path because I know it's a secure bet.
Mhm.
People tend to want those secure bets in life that they know, like I think of a lot of, or I know there are young people today that were told that college was that safe bet, that the waters have parted, they went to high school, they got the scholarships, and it didn't turn out that way. And it turns out college degrees don't get you as much as they used to, but they did it because they thought the seas had parted before them.
And I think, the attitude of the Israelites is the same as the attitude today. Remember, they complained all the time when they're walking through the wilderness. We were better off in Egypt. Why did you ever take us out? You should have left us there. Things were better in the past than they are now. And I think the same thing, you look at something new and you think, is it really going to work? Maybe I was better off not doing it. And you have to make a decision. You gotta decide.
But is it not only the priests though, or only the priests are being challenged? Are they not? Doesn't the water stay parted when the?
Yeah, so that's the other thing that helps with the distance is it's really only the priests that have to step into this situation. And by the time that the other people have crossed the 100 football fields or whatever, the waters are already parted for the people. They have already backed up, and it's evidently the town that they say that the water's backed up for was 16 miles away. So it's not even like they're passing single file through the Jordan River. There is like a big gap where just the people can just walk past it. Yeah. Mary Ellen, did you have another thought?
No, I actually had the same thought Gary did.
Okay.
Only the only little side effect was the people in the back had no idea what was going on. They just kept moving. And so, there's the movers and the shakers in our world who take these chances and, live their life through faith. And then there's the people that just follow along.
Yeah. So I don't know if you all remember this, but I think it was 2 or 3 summers ago. I actually did a sermon on this scripture passage. To this day, it's actually one of my favorites, and I'm very sad that the recording of it is awful. It's just unlistenable, unfortunately. But one of the it was in the series where we were talking about the future of the modern church, some of the reasons why the church is struggling, what we're up against, and then this was either the last or the second to last sermon of the series. And the thought I was playing with is right now, the church needs to do something. I think everyone's in agreement that something has to change. But when it comes to how to change and what to do, are we at a point where we need to start walking and trust that pieces are going to come into place? Or are we waiting for the waters to part in order to walk through a secure path that will guarantee the future of Northminster, the future of other small churches? Are we waiting for the waters to part? And as a congregation, what does it mean to start walking first?
I think that's what we're doing right now. We're walking first. Our church is not, I don't know what other churches are doing.
So what does it look like for our church to step out into the Jordan River?
Well, I think your community garden was a marvelous idea. And certainly that's one thing that you people have done. And then to develop it also with more things to make it even more attractive. Those are things that bring the community in. And I think that's a wonderful beginning. And there are probably other things you have thought of doing. I don't know what they are, but you've
Mhm.
probably done a lot of work on other possibilities. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example. Thank you, Helen. We
Sure.
built a garden with only like a few people in our congregation who wanted a plot themselves, but the thing is, we were gifted money to do it, but we built it with the faith that people would come. And this is the second year in a row where people have come, and we're getting to know new people. Other people are becoming familiar with us. We stepped out and it looks like the water's parted a little bit more.
Mhm.
Yeah, Larry?
If I were God planning this escapade, I would have a little conference with the priests, the 12 people,
Mm-hmm.
and tell them, look, you're going to be safe. I'm going to take care of you. We're going to have the water get out of your way. You aren't going to have to worry. And we're going to keep the people way back, 2,000 cubits back. So it's all ready for them before the people get here. Because if they get there too quick, they're going to start complaining about not being able to get into the water and there aren't enough boats, all of that sort of thing. So we got to have the stage all set before the act takes place.
Mm. See, that to me makes me think of how like we have session, which is only 6 people and myself, and we make decisions, and by the time it makes it to the congregation, hopefully the decisions are well thought out enough. We're like, okay,
Yes.
here's what we've made. Come along. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
We've thought this out.
But somebody's got to take the first step. That was the point. There isn't any question. Somebody's got to be the first group to get their feet wet. And if the thing is going to progress, you've got to have that first step. A
Mm-hmm.
journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, I'm sitting here thinking about the times when I didn't want to do something, and I just put things in place so I had to. One of the things about life is that time moves on, so it comes all on its own, and then you have to do it. And the most recent thing was going up north with Bill's ashes. I just, I didn't. I did it, but I didn't want to. So and I had that same feeling when I got married. I put things in place, and I had to. So you can't. Well, I know now that you can do like in movies, people are always just running out of the church just before or not showing up. But generally, I think getting married is really scary for a lot of people. Or going to college. I was, well, my parents went with me, but there were other times when I went by myself and took the train. We took trains then in those days, and it just happens you have to do it. So, I don't know if other people have situations like that where you don't want to do something, but things are in place and you do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting part of human psychology that I find interesting is when like humans tend to like homeostasis. Like we find a rhythm and we stick to it. And one of the things that is happening with my family back in Kansas is my grandmother is at the point where she doesn't want to be, or the house is that she's living in is too big. She can't take care of the house. But that means she needs to, or they're in my parents are in the process of moving her to assisted living, or not assisted living, independent living. But she's going to be in a communal living spot, which will be really good for her. But she is hesitant and doesn't want change. She knows what she's doing isn't working, but she doesn't want to get her feet wet. She doesn't want to have the change. And one of the things that I keep wondering is, does she enjoy where she is at, or is she just used to the comfort of it? Because one thing is, she's fairly lonely and fairly isolated, and there comes a point where you wonder if loneliness is just more comfortable but not more enjoyable. Yeah, Mary Ellen?
It's the unknown. I don't think it has, and obviously I relate to your situation. I don't think it has anything to do with, the comfortable, well, it does, the comfortable of the situation you're in or whatever, but it's the fear of the unknown. Who are these people? Will they like me? Will I fit in? What's going to happen to me? And, what comes next? And, we see so much of it here in our, I call it the sales team, but the sales team, part of the process is if you're interested and you want to know more, is you're invited over for a meal. And, you experience the atmosphere of the dining room and, the laughter of the people and whatever else. And it was probably about 4 months ago, there was a couple, and couples are rare to come into senior living. And I heard him say, after a whole outburst of laughter, whatever had been going on, and he said, I could live here. And, they need to experience the atmosphere. So it isn't black and white for your grandmother.
Yeah.
Definitely not at all. But then I'm also going to interject and say, hey, I want to get to the rocks.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, Larry?
I was just gonna say, often our attitude is this half full, is the glass half full or half empty? You say, well, my situation really isn't very good, but it could be worse. Maybe the new place is going to be worse, not better. So I'm better off staying here, being a slave rather than going off in the wilderness.
Well, with moving into a residential situation, you also have your stuff to deal with. My sister really needs to be in a different situation than she is. Yeah, the function of denial is amazing, but it's stuff. All that stuff.
So some of this, I think, we're going to get to the stones in a moment, but one last thing is it gives a little bit of texture to what's happening. Is the people are finally getting what they've been promised for generations now.
Yeah.
But it's also the unknown. Like there is a sense that they have no idea what they're walking into. They have their imaginations, but in the end, they have no idea. But there's also the reality of they're bringing their stuff with them too. And so it's not that they're walking in with clean slates. They're walking in with baggage. They always were. We always come with our baggage. And so they're walking into the unknown, carrying their baggage and their little ones. And by the time the people get there, the waters are parted. Their leaders have done what they needed to make the crossing as easy as possible. And then they like so many other things, God wants a way for the people to remember what happens. Now, I had to read over this chapter 4 a few times to figure out what's happening, because the time seems weird in this chapter. But they set up 12 stones, and there's a possibility that there's 2 sets of 12 stones. Kind of unclear. It looks like stories once again are smashed together. So there's stones from the river that they take out and bring to the camp, and then there's stones that they have on land that they put in the river as a memorial. And so there seems to be stones in the water and stones on land. So Mary Ellen, what were you thinking specifically with the stones? Did you have a question about them, or?
No, I just want more of the stones in the river that, were they intended to be a pathway, or I've got it in chapter 4, verse 9. And is it just in the middle of the river, a memorial? I mean, what is it?
I don't know, unfortunately.
All
Let me see if the internet has anything to say. If there's like a are there 12 stones in the Jordan? So the one thing that does seem to be, or like one of the things that this seems to reference, is that there was a landmark that people seem to know about, more or less. I am not seeing anything specifically like the 12 stones are still standing today, but it seems like there was something that this is referencing that people still knew about. And your key to the, like, there's a landmark here is the end, and they are there to this day, which means think like, that pile of rocks over by the Jordan River, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like archaeologists have found where these were, but it seems like they knew where these were.
Yeah.
Larry?
Well, it wasn't uncommon through all of these stories, whenever something big happened, they either built an altar or made a pile of rocks, and this is another one of those major events,
Yes.
and they want to commemorate it, so they commemorate it. I can't understand it either. They put 12 stones in the river and they take 12 out and put them on land, and that's their commemoration.
Is there a possibility that there's same 12 stones, but the course of the river has changed?
The notes down below that I was doing some extra reading with, the notes are saying that there's 2 sets of stones, not one set that have moved back and forth.
Okay.
This is where it's likely that there's 2 versions of the story. And in one version, they take stones out, and in the other version, they put stones in. And then when you put two stories together, they're like, huh, there seems to be a discrepancy, so we'll just keep them both.
Both, yeah.
Well, for the story that put the stones in, when they release the dam of the Jordan River, they're going to be flooded. They're going to be gone. They're going to be deep underwater. So maybe that plan didn't work.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know. It's not like they created a bridge for future people to cross on. I don't know, it just confused me. I couldn't see any point in all of this, so
the other reason why we know this is a landmark, this location will be referenced further on in scripture. Let's see, where does it say this? Where is it? So later on in scripture, when they want to refer to the crossing of the Jordan River, the moniker will be, remember what happened at Shittim and Gilgal. So Gilgal is where they end up. And so when Gilgal is referenced, there seems to be a shrine there, and a shrine with 12 rocks, which is likely the ones they brought out of the river. So this does have like a lasting shrine that exists there. The thing is, one of the places it will come up again, which we will eventually hit this story. So I want you to put a bookmark in your brain to the crossing of the Jordan River and Gilgal, because when we get to it, the first king of Israel will be anointed at Gilgal.
Oh.
So the first king of this people will, like that, he will be chosen, there will be a ceremony, and it will take place at this location.
Hmm.
My notes also say the second king was reconciled with this and did too, but I don't know what that's right. But it also mentions that it says the verses tell of a monument set up in the riverbed, still visible in the author's day. So evidently you could see it up until then, or longer.
What my thought was is that the rocks that they put in the river weren't like rocks, but they were boulders. And so there's a chance that there is like boulders that like protruded out from the river that could have been seen, and then there would have been some kind of shrine on land. And so that was my mental image, but I cannot verify that.
Yeah.
But it does seem to be that there was something on the riverbed that indicated something happened there.
Right. They would have to be significant.
So then about 40,000 armed people for war crossed over the Jordan River to the plains of Jericho for battle, and were set up for the next story. So the army has crossed over. They are ready to get going on the plan that God has set before them. What do you all think? Is this a way to make a grand entrance, or are they just kind of like sitting there looking at their toes?
I would say that's pretty impressive.
Well, it makes you think you better be ready for a lot of battles. I mean,
You can comment about the waters of the Jordan backing up, like you said, 16 miles. Can you elaborate on this?
They know that the people are crossing over specifically to go to Jericho, and we know the location of Jericho. And so they made let's see. It says in chapter 3 verse 16 that the waters rose into a single heap far off as Adam, the city that is beside Zarathan, whose waters flowed to the sea of Arabah, the Dead Sea, were wholly cut off. So we have the locations of all of these places. So they measured what's the distance between Jericho and the city of Adam besides Zarathan, and so that gap is 16 miles. And so if you were anywhere in the location between here and that city, all of a sudden the river would dry up for no reason, and you wouldn't, like, there's a chance if you were over a mile away, you wouldn't see the people crossing. All of a sudden you would just see a dry river.
Or a flood, depending on which side you're on.
Fair. Yeah, if you're above with the city, the waters are standing up, and they might have gotten a flood upstream.
Okay.
Would the occupants of Jericho been aware of this whole process of the river drying up and these people marching through?
It's in chapter 5, at the beginning of chapter 5, it says they were.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me see. Oh, wow. I'm trying to look up some distances, and it evidently the river drops 610 feet down. It's evidently deep. And
is
it's
that,
probably over 100. They're saying that it's around 100 feet wide.
No, it's not that.
back then or now?
Right.
I have to check out, so I'll
Okay.
see you, Chris.
All right, sounds good. Okay. So I'm sorry. I'll try to get that for next time. I don't know actually how far away the two are. My guess is they're if I remember correctly, they are fairly close to each other. Hold on. Here's a different way to do it.
Ask Alexa.
Jericho, Israel. Okay, we're pulling it up on Google Maps and seeing what we can. Okay. So here we are. Share screen. All right, folks. So this here is the River Jordan. This is, if you go to, this is not on the Israeli side, this is on the other side, but there is a spot over here. This is the traditional spot for the baptism of Jesus, and Jericho's right over here. So it is fairly close. There is a bit of distance. But to put this kind of in context, it is very close down here. This blue body is the Dead Sea versus the Sea of Galilee, which is, zoom out, that's way up here. So they are crossing over very close to the Dead Sea. And let's see, it is, and oh, there we go. Jerusalem would be slightly southwest, or yeah, southwest of it. So yes, if you are in Jericho, you can probably you will see the people amassing, basically. Yeah, Larry?
The other thing that was interesting, in spite of all their attention to meticulous detail, there's no mention. How long did it take to get 40,000 people, all their household goods, all their animals, and all of that across that river? You know, it would have taken quite a while. I mean, it was, and it would be quite obvious that something was happening, I think.
Oh yeah, the city would know what's going on. Without modern time telling, it's not just that they told time differently, they cared about time differently. So in the Protestant world, we're very much like, oh, church hasn't started and it's 1 minute after the hour, and we're very clock conscious. Where they are more distance conscious, and it seems to be like they would understand how much time it took to cover distance. So distance sometimes can substitute for time, but they just didn't care about, that's one of the numbers they don't really care about, is how much time did it take. So anyways, well, that's where we will leave the story for today. The people have crossed, the army is amassing, The city of Jericho is probably panicking.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So shall I pray us out for today?
Yeah.
All right, let us pray. Gracious and loving God, there are many things that you call us to do, and sometimes we can step out confidently, knowing that you are going before us, and then other times we have to trust that you are by our side, that you are with us in every step that we take. We trust that you'll be with us no matter if how we step out is a success or if ultimately it doesn't work out and we have to change the plans. Because you say that you are with us no matter where we go. There is no place high enough nor a place low enough that you will not be with us. And there is nothing that can separate us from your love. So God, we trusting in that, we step out into this week. And I ask that you be with this group until we're able to gather again together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank
All
you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
Take care.
Everybody, have a good one.